Hello everyone. We are very happy to present to you a very special course. Before we start, let's introduce ourselves.
Okay, first I'm Jerry Rao. I am currently an adjunct professor in electrical engineering, but my background is actually biology, which is important for the synthetic biology competition that this is primarily about.
I am Victoria Rao, He Dehua. I am a linguist. The reason I am part of this team is because a few years ago, I was invited by Professor Sophia Li Zhengyi from the Biomedical Department, Biomedical Sciences Department, who was organizing a team to participate in international competition. I was recruited as a coach to train them to speak English. And at that time, I recruited Professor Jerry Rao, who has both background in biology and also an excellent English speaker.
So as we just mentioned, the main purpose of this course is to prepare the iGEM team for international competition. Now, what is iGEM? iGEM stands for the International Genetically Engineered Machine. And genetically engineered machine has to do with synthetic biology. That is, making sections of DNA in order to make products. So this is an international synthetic biology competition. And again, they modify the DNA in naturally occurring organisms in order to make useful products for people. Like what kinds of products? So this is the 6th year of the iGEM competition. 3 of the teams have dealt with something to do with disease detection, either dental caries, cavities, African swine fever, or dengue fever. 2 of them have dealt with disease treatment, designing ways to deal with antibiotic-resistant bacteria or cardiovascular disease. And 1 has approached an environmental concern, that is, paper cup liners, which are not recyclable because they're plastic. And so the main purpose of the course, as we said, is to prepare the iGEM team for international competition. But because many international teams deal with presentations and the same sorts of projects, this will be useful for other international competitions as well. And perhaps for other courses, those who need to use English and present in English for other purposes.
In other words, this course prepares you to learn how to communicate effectively in international communication, especially in a competition setting. So for our course contents, of course, the first topic is certainly how to get started. How do you find a good topic? And then we would like to show you how to document the process of your research. Of course, you have to write it up in good English. And then the next stage is to present what you have done in oral presentation. Then it involves good communication skills in oral presentation. And the very last stage is to make sure you know how the judges view your presentation and your products, and how the audience appreciate your presentation. So these are the contents of this course. It's very practical and it's set up to help you succeed.
Okay, so there's a complete list of videos which will be available online along with this course that will give all the details of each of the individual videos within each of those units. And you can choose whichever ones meet your needs best.
Now we're going to talk about 3-phase English training. Of course, the first phase is before you're ready to compete internationally. You have to strengthen your general English ability. This is beyond our control. You have to do your homework. In other words, you have to increase your vocabulary and strengthen your grammar structure. The second stage is academic English. This is exactly what we are trying to do to help you strengthen your ESP, English for specific purposes. That means maybe you want to use English for legal purposes, or for business purposes, or for medical purposes, or for engineering purposes, and so on. That's ESP, depending on your field. You may need different concepts, different vocabulary. And then the next one is EAP, English for academic purposes. In other words, in an academic setting, we have our expectation on how you should write to present your research results, how you should present orally in a conference. And of course, in our academic environment, we also emphasize EMI, English Medium Instruction. So this second academic English section is to empower you to really know how to use English to present your research, your work, your product internationally. And the very last section is ELF, English as a lingua franca. In other words, at this stage, all of you should be already prepared well enough to communicate internationally using English confidently and competently as a lingua franca. In other words, we all speak English as a second language, but we need to be very careful in how we communicate with others so that they feel we are really friendly, polite, and make our point clearly.
So the first unit, we'll talk about 3 different topics. The first is English as a lingua franca, a common language that we can all use to communicate. Then we'll talk more about English for academic purposes, because we're talking about academic presentations. And third, about intercultural communication and the importance of politeness and getting along with people and making sure that the communication is clear, even if the English grammar and other things are not. So why do we need to know about this? Well, again, English as a lingua franca, we're learning about how to communicate effectively in English as a common language. In the English as academic purposes, we'll talk about professional communication in this competition environment. Intercultural communication is important in order to promote your beliefs, promote your products effectively to an audience from a different culture. So that's this unit, and we're looking forward to sharing with you what we have learned over the past 6 years working with various iGEM teams to help them do these things.